Well, joining me now is Pennsylvania Congressman Mike Kelly, a member of the House Ways and Means Committee, to talk a little bit more about this. Thank you for joining us on this Saturday, first of all.
Well, thank you for having me here, though. I appreciate it.
So you heard the president speaking there, saying that it doesn't matter next week. It may happen, it may not happen. Is that true? And if it is true that it doesn't matter, why?
Well, I think you have to go back in history. Of course, with President Obama, it took almost 14 months to get the health care package put together. And I think if nothing else, we did learn. If you do it too quickly, and if you pass it and then find out what was in it, that's not the way to go about this. And I think we've had a lot of discussion. Our speaker has worked very hard to make sure he brings all sides together to hear their concerns. And you know, it's unique because there's 435 of us, and we all come from different districts with different needs. And I think you have to observe those things. And you know what? You want to hear from the people. You want to hear from the people's house, and you want to hear from their representatives as to what we can do that's in their best interest, not in the best interest of a slogan of let's hurry up and get it done. I don't want to hurry up and get it done. As I said, if there's one thing we learned, pushing something through and saying we're going to have to pass it before we know what's in it, that was a disaster. You look at the game films, you say, you know what, we're not going to do it that way. And I think top-down types of addressing things aren't well. I like it from the bottom up, where actually the people's voice is heard. I think that's what we're doing right now.
So more important to get it done correctly than get it done quickly. But how do you bring all of those sides together? You were just mentioning, I mean, people from different areas of the country with different needs, different communities. So how do you make everybody happy?
Well, I think what you do, you're never going to make everybody completely happy. And I know at this point in my life, the one thing I do know, you start off with a common goal. How you get to the end goal is a little bit different because people have different opinions. And as I said, 435 people in Congress right now that represent very distinct districts. And so you want to hear from them as to what most affects the people that sent you here to represent them. I think if you lose sight of that, you've lost sight of the whole concept of self-governance, where the people actually make the decisions. So I got to tell you, though, I'm looking forward to this. I've never been more happy than where I am right now. And really, to have a leader rather than a lecturer actually in the White House, it makes it a lot easier to get to the end.
So, I mean, the common goal, obviously, would be to have the best health care possible at the lowest price. So money isn't coming out of people's own pockets at the rate that it has been.
Yeah, but I think the other thing now, we're addressing the cost of insurance, but we're not addressing what's costing insurance to be so high, and that is the actual cost of health care and where we've come. And I know in my lifetime, when people were to say they're going to get a new knee, a new hip, a new heart, you didn't hear that back in a couple of decades ago. You hear it now. So health care has changed dramatically. The cost of health care has skyrocketed. There's a lot of things that enter into that, and I think taking a real long, broad look at that and then determining when we actually get down to the cost of insurance, those are all factors that have to be factored in. And then the other part of it is there are some people, the truly vulnerable, who cannot afford health care. That's why we have Medicaid. There's some of us areas that we represent that we have very high populations of people who draw down on Medicaid, and you have to keep that in consideration. There's not a one-size-fits-all. It's just not going to happen that way. But there's the effort to hear from everybody and make it a relevant piece of legislation is the key, and that's something that promotes in economic growth and doesn't hinder it.
But as you know, we have to get past the talking point because we also have tax reform and budget issues to deal with. This amendment just quickly, this amendment that we've been talking about, the most recent issue happening is the amendment, the Meadows-MacArthur amendment. Do you think that that will be enough to get everything passed?
Yeah, you know, in addition to Mark talking with Tom, I think there was also Dave Schweikert got together with Gary Palmer. That high-risk pool, that extra piece in there that maybe is the reinsurance piece was critical also. The other thing, the essential health benefits. You know, Heather, there was so much that went into it. Number one on my priority list right now is getting back to Congress and making sure that there's not a government shutdown. That's looming in front of us right now. That's the biggest gorilla in the room that we have to address. Health care we're going to get to. We're going to do it in a sensible, reasonable way that makes sense for the people that we represent and the people that we serve. That's the only way to get it fixed.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope that everything that you said bears out to be true. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.